The new Labour-Blair government, they widened the net. They widened the net and the scope of offences that you could get this new IPP life sentence for. It's very effective, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. You know, this sentence is for the most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences. A lot of close aides to Tony Blair told them, do not do this. It will lead to catastrophic mass injustice. It will lead to people spending way too long in prison. We had a devastating influx of over 8,700 IPPs into an already overcrowded, dilapidated penal system in England and Wales. Short tariff IPPs flooded the BCAT local prisons all around England and Wales, and it just clogged up the system, and we've never recovered. People understand, you know, we've got now 1,400 IPPs on recall, plus the 2,100, 2,200 who've never been released. Nearly all of them are over tariff now. I'm watching short tariff IPPs with 6-month tariffs in their 15th year, and they're cutting their ears clean off, like with razors, slashing the tops of their ears off. The self-harm and suicide statistics for IPPs are just staggering. I think it's probably around 150 suicides.
Before the podcast, a word from our sponsor, Surfshark. I'm using my Surfshark VPN right now. I can watch Netflix stuff that's banned in the UK. Running a YouTube channel, dealing with all kinds of true crime characters, I've learned a lot about criminal activity. But there's a type of crime that people don't really talk about. I'm talking about cybercrime, and anybody can be a victim. If you use a device on a public Wi-Fi network, your data is up for grabs from hackers. I was hacked like crazy a couple of years ago, and that's why I know we've all got to be savvy when it comes to cybercrime and fraud. If you subscribe to Surfshark, you know that experts in online security are protecting you at all times. This added security comes from something called a VPN, Virtual Private Network. This means if you are a Surfshark subscriber, every time you surf the net, your privacy is protected. If you want to support what we're doing on this channel, check out the link at the bottom of the screen, put in the special code Shaun, SHAUN, and you will get 83% off your first 3 months subscription. Quite good. Oh shit, I've just done that last bit wrong. It's 3 months free and 83% off. I'm signing up for this. There's no obligation to sign a lengthy contract, and they will not charge you during the free trial period. So what have you got to lose? Give Surfshark a go. UK Prison Horror Stories podcast. I think it was one of the first ones we ever did.
Number 5.
Number 5. If you didn't see it, it is in the description box below the video, as are links to all of other Pepsi stuff, his new YouTube channel, and all of his other mission links are down there. So please support his important work, campaigning to end this insane and torturous IPP sentencing regime, which they had you fall through the cracks again, didn't they? You got in a situation. Why don't you update the viewers then how your life has been since we did our last chat? And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here as always. It's great to see you. Great to see everybody here at the studio. There's been so much that's happened since that true crime podcast. That's when you had started the true crime podcast. It seems like such a long time ago now, doesn't it?
How long ago was it?
It was December 2018, and at that time, I had just been released on it had been my second release from the IPP sentence. I'd just spent 2 years on recall, so I'd just been released from Winchester prison, and so I'd already done the original tariff that I got, which was 1 year, 10 months in 2006. I'd already spent a number of years in custody, and then I'd been out for a number of years. And the time that I'd spent in custody, I had completed all the offender behaviour courses. I'd completed all the what they call core risk reduction work, which is the offender behaviour courses that one has to complete to address the risk, the perceived risk that you pose, to get it down enough for the parole board to release you. I had an exemplary prison disciplinary record. I completed all the courses. I'd started to educate myself. I'd done quite a long time in therapy on the wrapped wing at HMP Wayland, and I'd been released, and I'd been out for those number of years. And in those number of years that I was out, I carried on the kind of change, the transformation in my life, and I worked in hospitality. I worked at some of the biggest hospitality companies in the country. I worked at Mitchell and Butler, Whitbread, Cafe Rouge. I eventually secured employment under Rick Stein, who's a very well-known, world-famous chef down on the Sandbanks Peninsula. But during those first few years, I also did GCSEs. I trained in adult health and social care counselling. I did some practitioner work. And initially the hospitality thing was just to kind of pay the bills, but I ended up really enjoying it, Shaun, and it just gave me a wonderful life. And when the sun was setting on the south coast there at the Sandbanks Peninsula, in the Rick Stein's theatre, and just hundreds of people in this restaurant, I just felt like I was on top of the world. It gave me the opportunity to showcase the skills and attributes and talents that I had that I'd never been able to put to good use out in the real world. So it was incredible. It was amazing. And prison was a distant memory. I never ever thought I would go back. I was not involved in any criminal activities or anything like that. And so I ended up getting recalled because I met a woman.
Before we go there, so you had a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
You'd relocated with the help of a viewer.
Yeah.
Are you okay to talk about that?
Relocated, sorry.
Didn't you move to London from the coast?
Yeah, this is after I got recalled, so I'm just kind of building up to that.
Oh, sorry.
Now,
sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, no,
okay,
no,
okay.
yeah, I know what you mean. I'll get to that. Yeah.
Okay, go.
So, I got recalled because I met a lady. She's a professional lady, a dentist, and the probation service were telling me that I had to tell her that I was on IPP, and I was kind of telling her about my background and my life in my own time, and but they kind of forced the issue and kind of made me tell her.
Do you want to explain to the viewers what an IPP prisoner is?
So an IPP prisoner, there's a lot of propaganda about this because of the systematic deflecting away from the injustice of the sentence. So basically, the IPP sentence was brought out and used as a political weapon to nail down the 2005 general election. It was Tony Blair, Jack Straw, David Blunkett, Ben Faulkner, all these top politicians who kind of stole the risk-based sentencing idea from the Americans to secure the predominantly white middle-class vote in the UK. It's very effective, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, and they brought out this sentence. So since then, it's been said that this sentence is for the most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences. But this is actually not true, Shaun, because at that time in 2005 and still today in 2021, there already existed a sentence for the most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences, which is a mandatory life sentence with a chunky, meaty double-figure tariff of 30 years, 35 years. The most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences are not short tariff IPPs with a 5-month tariff for stealing a mobile phone who've now been locked up for 16 years of indefinite detention. Those kind of dangerous offenders, the most dangerous, are all serving 30, 35-year plus mandatory life sentences, locked up safely away in the high secure Category A dispersal cluster. So it's just not true that it was for the most serious offences. So the Tony Blair and the new Labour Blair government, they widened the net. They widened the net and the scope of offences that you could get this new IPP life sentence for. It replaced a sentence that was called an automatic life sentence, so 2 strikes and out, which meant that if you got sentenced twice for a crime that carried a life sentence, you would get an automatic life sentence with a tariff of a number of years, a minimum term, the punitive element. So the range of offences that you could get the old automatic life sentence for would be like a GBH Section 18 malicious wounding, an attempted murder, a manslaughter, a firearms, explosives, rape, robbery. So the new Labour Blair government, they abolished that and they widened the net to 157 offences. Offences like assault with intent to rob, or offences that only carry a number of years as a maximum sentence. They took all the discretionary away from the judges, all of it, 100%, and they told the judge, and everyone told them not to do it. All the think tanks told them not to do it. The Sainsbury Centre for Mental Health, a lot of close aides to Tony Blair told them, do not do this. It will lead to catastrophic mass injustice. It will lead to people spending way too long in prison than they should do. It will lead to huge suffering, and they went ahead with it and did it anyway. They took all the discretion away from the judges, and they told all the judges in Crown Courts in England and Wales, if anybody comes up into your Crown Court for any of these 157 offences, you will give them a life sentence with a minimum term.
So it's like, is it a 99-year thing that's hung over your head? Yeah,
it's a life sentence, an indeterminate sentence. You have no right to release other than via a parole board who has to decide whether you're fit to be released. So then what happened? We had a devastating influx of over 8,700 IPPs into an already overcrowded, dilapidated penal system in England and Wales. The IPPs, short tariff IPPs, flooded the BCAT local prisons all around England and Wales, and it just clogged up the system. And we've never recovered as a criminal justice penal system. We've never, ever recovered.
Wow. All right, so you said, and you met a woman.
I met a woman, amazing woman. I met a woman. I was living a dream as a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I'd earned it, Shaun. It took me over a decade of working on myself, being the best version of myself that I possibly could be, working minimum wage, living in little box rooms, working, and then I told her. So I sat her down and told her that I was an IPP and that I'd robbed £200 from a shop with a knife, and unfortunately her mother would not accept the relationship back in Bucharest, and she told her to end the relationship, and then I relapsed. I failed 2 drug tests, and I was recalled. And I was recalled to the cesspit of humanity that was HMP Winchester. When the police officers turned up, I didn't know what they wanted. I told them to come in, and then they detained me and said, "You're at large. You've been recalled," and I still couldn't believe it.
What year was this?
This was December 2016. I went into Winchester prison. It was a horror show, a cesspit of humanity, a mental health epidemic of proportions never seen before, a drug epidemic of proportions never seen before. There was people hanging, dying, forced suicides, this self-harm thing was just massive. In the screaming you could hear in the night times of the delirium of people losing their mind. We were locked up for 23 and a half hours a day. We were hardly ever coming out of our cells. It was hot when we got to the summer. The violence there was just incredible. But what I saw there was a scale of suffering that has stayed with me something I've never witnessed before.
Sorry, one sec. You've knocked your shirt collar up on one side.
Oh, the prison shirt.
There you go, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, cheers. Okay. So, yeah, this scale of suffering. So if you imagine the first few years that I'd done in custody, the majority of which over tariff, of that 1 year, 10-month tariff I got, coming out, I'd been out for all those years. I'm now witnessing, Shaun, short tariff IPPs with 6 or 9 or 12 or 15-month tariffs or 2-year tariffs in their 11th, 12th, 13th year, who've been locked up this whole time, and they're skinny, they're grey, gaunt, like skeletons. There's just this soulless, dead, black look in their eye. There's nothing there. They are covered in the most horrific self-harm scars that I've ever seen in my life, like from top to bottom. They're carving chunks out of their legs. One's carving chunks out of his genitals, losing his mind in the healthcare unit. They're being sectioned to high secure hospitals. And I was a Samaritan's listener. I trained as a Samaritan's listener. I mean, but that didn't happen overnight. I was on hunger strikes. I was battling my own deterioration in mental health with the hopelessness and the despair attributed to not having a release date and being in prison without committing a crime, and this endless nature of the sentence. And I was going in cells at 2, 3, 4 in the morning with 35-year prison officer veterans who had never seen a scale of suffering either. So I started to kind of legally fight against my predicament, because I could never accept or understand being in custody indefinitely without committing an offence. And for them to justify them taking me off the street for no other reason than 2 drug tests, failed drug tests, they kind of inflated the risk and kind of exaggerated the wordings in the Oasis risk assessment reports. So I started to challenge stuff and started to come up with evidence. So, for example, in their reports, they'd say I'd have no work history. And I would get all my references from top restaurants and say, well, this is not actually true. Could you, here's the references and the evidence. Do you mind amending that factual error? And the more the evidence that I provided to challenge their sort of ever-evolving, fictitious, malicious, slanderous risk assessment reports, the more dangerous they would claim I would be, and the more these risks went up. It was just incredible, and it got to the point throughout 2017 and 2018 where I'm stuck in this trap of the parole board procedure with adjournments and stuff, that they were now assessing me as more dangerous than I was when I got the IPP sentence, even though I've been recalled without committing a crime, exemplary prison disciplinary record, years in the community without committing further serious harm, and they were assessing me as more dangerous than I ever had been. And ever since this started to happen to me, I just couldn't take this theory, this philosophy, this system seriously anymore. And plus, what I was witnessing happening with my brothers around me, who were dying with this horrendous sentence. And I had a 6-hour parole board hearing. I sat similar to this, 3 judges. I sat there with a solicitor. And the judges questioned the probation officers on these supposedly high risk assessments to say I'm so dangerous. And so my probation officer at that time spoke for 1 hour. A theme emerged from his dialogue within that hour as he was talking. The respected judicial members of the parole board who questioned him. And every time they questioned him on specifics, like the work history and stuff, and the discrepancies that I provided evidence for, a theme emerged within his dialogue throughout that hour, which kind of went along the lines of, I'll have to get back to you on that one, Your Honour. I'll have to double check with my colleagues at Bournemouth Probation on that one. I'm not actually sure about that. It's like, this is someone's life. It's not, you weren't going to a football match, mate. This is like someone's life, and but they just appear exempt from accountability. And he just kind of sat there with this kind of air of arrogance that he'd written these reports to keep me detained for these 2 years, but didn't really have to come up with any evidence when all was said and done, at the parole hearing. So they released me, and they released me to the Bournemouth Probation Hostel in Bournemouth. They released me 225 miles away from my home, from my mother and stuff. And I was stuck in this hostel for 6 months. That was August 2018 when I came out of there, and that's when I met you, and we did the True Crime podcast, number 5, UK prison horror stories. Yeah.
So there's the backstory, folks. And I've had lots of people just messaging in, what is the latest with Pepsi? What's going on? Because there was a re-incarceration. I'm going to get to the cause of that now.
Yeah, cheers, Shaun. So, I mean, I came out of Winchester, and I was not a happy chappy. The first release in May 2011, and the emotion of it, the elation of it, that first release, and it was a hot day, the first release, and it was like the films, like the gate opening and the sun, and just this incredible, surreal feeling, like a movie. When I came out of Winchester after what I went through there, what I endured there, what I witnessed there, I came out and I walked out the gate and I just felt nothing. I felt nothing, nothing at all. And I went to this hostel. And before I left, I watched the Stephen Lawrence documentary. I watched Baroness Doreen Lawrence on the third part, and she said something very profound that resonated with me and really impacted me, which was, she said that you will never get to the bottom of corruption because the London Met or the state in that regard, won't allow it. And she was crying, and I saw this broken woman who'd fought for over a quarter of a century for justice for her son Stephen, and I watched that, and I listened to her words, and my kind of attitude, Shaun, was, I thought, well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. And I came out, and I just started. I just started talking about what I'd seen, but I intentionally adopted an unorthodox activism approach, activist style, which was kind of a new breed of kind of cutting edge digital media content, talking about the sentence and talking about things that I've seen and the corruption involved with the report writing and the forensic psychologist report writing. I started talking about it outside Westminster, Speaker's Corner, and then I would spend, a lot of time cutting down that content into clips and putting them online and stuff, and just trying to shake up the criminal justice system. I think I was a bit naive at the time, but whilst I was in custody, I'd made a complaint against the state forensic psychologist who the parole board had instructed to undertake a systematic inquiry of risk of my supposed dangerousness, and I refused to see her. I only saw her for 10 minutes just because the officer asked me to go down and speak to her and tell her that I wasn't going to see her. So I went down there while I was on the recall to go and see her. I said, I'm not going to see you. I'm a political prisoner. I haven't committed a crime. The sentence is banned at Strasbourg. Everybody knows it's wrong. I am a Rick Steins professional. I've transformed my life around beyond anyone's expectations. So I don't recognize the legality of me needing to see you. She then wrote a 35-page report assessing me as an imminent threat to life and limb with weapons, intimidation, and violence, and that I'm a high risk of serious harm, which is life and limb, or trauma, which is lifelong and near impossible to recover from. That was sent to the parole board. That kept me in longer and made it more difficult for me to get out. And so I'd pursued complaints about this, Shaun, through the correct and proper channels, through the HCPC, which is the Healthcare Professionals Council, which is the regulatory body that monitors the safeguarding and safe practice of forensic psychologists. They're independent, they're not state affiliated. And they recognised and acknowledged and decided that there was a case to investigate with this particular forensic psychologist, which they don't do lightly. So I had this legal situation going on. By this time, I'd moved up to London. I was in South London. I was staying in a charity house. I was setting up the studio. I'd done the podcast with you. I had an overwhelming, incredible response. Excuse me. I was still inundated with messages. I was appearing on Sky News on prisons. I was appearing on RT UK. We were reporting on stuff like Julian Assange, and I was meeting great journalists. I was on ITV. I started attending council meetings, talking about knife crime, gun crime, and stuff like that. Working with, or just kind of getting to know like local community civic leaders and stuff is really interesting. My life was amazing. Um, it was. I had an amazing life in London. I was climbing mountains. I was climbing up like Snowdon, raising awareness of IPP suicides. But I was now starting to talk about other stuff, because prison is a microcosm of society, and what we see in prison is quite often reflected in the wider society spectrum. So I started talking about mental health out in the community, self-harming and suicides with teenagers, discrimination, homelessness, mental health, like all these other issues. And everywhere I went around the UK, I saw suffering and I saw injustice everywhere I went. I was visiting prisoners and patients in high secure hospitals like Broadmoor and Rampton. I was sitting in CPA meetings with leading practitioners with deaf IPPs or IPPs with learning difficulties and stuff, like generating support with them, trying to raise awareness for their cases with no resources. I had no resources. It was very difficult. But it was amazing. There was no better feeling and nothing more that made me feel alive and than traveling up to Nottingham and sitting in a room and meeting a partially deaf, short, terrified PP who's been locked up for 15 years, and just hugging them and sharing coffee and food with them. It was amazing. I loved it, and so yeah, that was my life was going fine. I I I There's a couple of things that happened. I mean, my videos, podcasts and stuff, they're very high approval ratings. I never really hardly used to get negative comments or anything like that. Um, but after the Julian Assange thing, I kind of attracted some kind of attention that felt quite sinister, is the way I can describe it. I really felt that the best way I can describe it, Shaun, is that I'd kind of now entered a kind of realm that was quite sinister because I could kind of feel it in the air and in the energy. And the then Home Secretary and still now Home Secretary, Priti Patel, she made a tweet. She did a tweet on Twitter, and she said she would like all criminals to feel terror. It's quite a hardline approach, that you've got this debate, she's pro death penalty and stuff. Um, and this caused a lot of controversy. So I retweeted her tweet on my Twitter at the time, and I said, "Okay, no problem. You want all criminals to feel terror? Do you mean your rich banker, corrupt friends, your fraudulent friends who have defrauded the good British citizens out of hundreds of thousands and millions of pounds, like Geoffrey Cox QC? Do you also mean VIP Westminster linked paedophile rings, or are you just on about poor black kids from Peckham?" And it kind of it went like viral. This tweet, my phones and devices were just buzzing, and I had this huge backlash, which just kind of evolved into like death threats and we're gonna rape your mum and gang rape your daughter and all this kind of stuff, and sending samurai swords to my emails and stuff, and that was quite. It wasn't a very nice experience, and I just didn't know it was like 12-year-old kids in their mum's house with an iPhone 6 or like credible threats to life. It's a quite difficult thing to go through, but generally other than that, things are going really well. And I was then hauled in to Lambeth Probation, and I was given a final warning straight off the bat for being accused of harassment against the psychologist. It's very unorthodox. Normally, you would get kind of a speaking to, a verbal warning, or maybe a phone call. We've had this report, like what's going on. But they just hauled me in. They gave me a final warning straight off the bat for for making complaints through the correct and proper channels against the psychologist. I've never contacted the lady, nor would I. When I did meet her after what she did to me, I was kind and loving. I introduced her to my mother. So yeah, it was just strange. And I said to my probation, how can you give me a final warning for making a complaint through the correct and proper channels, number one? And number two, this is historical.
That's totally Kafkaesque.
It's historical. You know, like I haven't even been in touch with the HCPC for ages because I've been too busy. So he said it's from above.
Technicality. That's
He
what
said
they
it's
use,
from
a
above.
technicality to get you.
He said it's from above, and I don't know if he's lying, but that's what he said. He said it's from above. Excuse me. So I left there dumbfounded. I didn't know kind of what to think of it. It was very confusing, but I just tried to continue on with my life, and then doing a lot of consultancy work, very busy. I was studying as well, completing more modules for my degree, my Bachelor of Arts with the Open University. He hauled me back into probation 5 weeks later. Now, remember at this time in Lambeth Probation, I had 9 probation officers in a 17-month period that I was out. I had 9 probation officers. They were unreachable as a point of contact. I have over 12, 13 emails, all regarding like trying to go home and visit my mum or something to do with the Open University, something to do with accommodation, education or training or, you know, something positive. They never applied to me. You could never get through at the reception at Lambeth Probation. And it was just horrendous. It was horrendous. I could never get through to them. That I couldn't get back home to see my mum because they were taking an average of 7 to 9 weeks to sign it off. And so they were preventing me from going home and really kind of pushing me on my civil liberties. And yeah, they hauled me back in there again, the same probation officer. And he gave me another final warning straight off the bat without ever contacting me. And I keep emphasizing that, Shaun, because the protocol is, you know, if there's any issues on the life license, then there's a procedure and a protocol, which is to liaise with the professionals that you may be working with at the time. So I was working with therapists. I had a recovery support worker. I had a manager in that charity house that I was living at. Sorry. But none of them were contacted. You know, this protocol wasn't unfortunately honored. So he gave me a second final warning for a YouTube video, which was my response video to the Channel 4 Crime and Punishment series about Winchester Prison. And I made a response video talking about my opinion about why I didn't agree with some of the content and the narrative. So the filmmakers at the prison, they showed Aaron Harris, who's a short, terrified PP. He's been locked up 13, 14 years. And they were talking about amputating his leg because he's just carving chunks out of it. He's skinny like a skeleton, all gaunt, with bags under his eyes. And I used to, when I was a listener, Samaritan's listener in Winchester, I used to go and talk to him. So I know his case very well. I know his situation very well. And the filmmakers at the film company, they were showing images of Sarah Payne, who was raped and murdered, an 8-year-old girl in this country in the early noughties by a paedophile called Roy Whiting. And they showed these images, and then they switched to the images of Aaron Harris, and they created the narrative to the viewer that all short, terrified PPs, you know, if you dare to let them out, you know, that at any time they could go on a child rape spree and start executing and raping young girls, which is, I know is not true, right? And I didn't agree with it, so I made a response video. The response video was powerful. It was cutting edge, and there was an extract, and the probation officer read the extract out, and the extract was, I'd said on the video, my mission is to wipe the disease of IPP off the face of the earth. And he was saying that I'm causing psychological harm to society, which meets the threshold of serious harm and lifelong trauma. And I was in there not even 10 minutes. I mean, he didn't even give me a chance to explain or anything. And then I left. And then he recalled me. He recalled me back to custody. He recalled me. What he started to do, and I know there's been a lot of like, rumors and stuff like that. So I'll put the record straight, like, this is what happened. So I'd had those 2 final warnings, but I'm now losing my mind, Shaun. Like, the living with the psychological terror of the threat of another indefinite recall without committing a crime. If that's not enough on its own, I'm now on 2 final warnings. So I'm now, maneuvering through London thinking, at any time I can be locked up. So I just kind of stayed in my flat. I just stayed indoors. I was still shooting podcasts. I was still going out feeding the homeless. When you look back on those vlogs now, you can't really see the pain I'm in because I kind of covered it up quite well, and I wasn't really talking about it with anyone. I wasn't really talking about it with people that I love and care about. I was just suffering with it on my own. It's horrendous. I became like suicidal. I felt like there's one night, like, I was down near Chelsea Bridge, and I was looking over the side, and I was looking over the side at the water, and it was very inviting. Thinking about, like, maybe jumping off this bridge, and that kind of comforting feeling of escaping this kind of never-ending torture, like, the psychological torture of this sentence, and all the confusion around not knowing why I'm getting these silly warnings. So the probation officer, what he started to do, he started to make phone calls to anybody and anyone that he's got phone numbers for in my life. So there was a girl that I dated in the summer, a girl that messaged me on Instagram, a girl that I didn't know. I took her on a few dates around London. I treated her like a perfect gentleman. The whole time I was with her, I never raised my voice to her. I took her on nice walks around London. I took her for ice cream, coffee, went to Hyde Park, and I always made sure she got home back to where she lived. And my probation officer only had her phone number. Such was my open and transparent, collaborative attitude in supervision with probation officers. So he started ringing her, asking loaded questions. What was he like? Was he any trouble? And on the recall paperwork, it said that she'd said that I was a bit controlling, and he pushed the button and recalled me on that. That's what he pushed the button on, and he managed to extract like a one screenshot out of her, out of a possible, I don't know, 400 or 500 over the times that we'd communicated on WhatsApp, and he extracted this screenshot out of her. I now know it was quite predatory what he'd done. He kind of preyed on a woman who was hurting, because I'd rejected her. I went to a wedding in northwest London in Harlesden. I remember the last time I saw her. I failed my exams, had to do a resit, and I stood at the bottom of the escalator at London Bridge Station, and I told her, I can't be in a relationship with you anymore. Like, I'm sorry. And she was devastated, and that's the last time I saw her. That was all I did wrong. Again, this is historical because this is months later, Shaun, and he's ringing her from months before. He's pushed the button on recall. I attended my probation appointment, my last one on the 6th, 6th of January, 2020. I went down there on time, punctual, as normal, well presented, with my progress update list. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I've been on Sky News, London councils, I'm climbing mountains, I'm studying, I'm smashing it. And which it was like they didn't like. It was like they didn't like it. That I'm just excelling and flourishing. It was like they didn't like it. I went into the probation appointment. I went in there with my new partner at that time, who was a barrister. She'd been a barrister for 25 years. And up until that moment when I walked in there, I'd not breached any of my license conditions in the 17 months that I've been out, Shaun. And he was acting really shifty, answering the phone with one-word answers twice. After the second phone call, he was like, right, you've got to go. He said, about your next appointment, he said, I'm flexible. We'll say like a couple of weeks. The barrister tried to shake his hand. He refused. He wouldn't shake her hand. And then I walked out there and there's 5 police officers and they handcuffed me. And I just couldn't believe it. I was distraught, My partner was crying. The female police officer said to me, she said, we know you're not a bad person. They locked me up in the back of this van and put me in Brixton Police Station. And then the next day I was in HMP Thameside. And then I spent the next year locked up in a cell locked up in a cell, the majority of which in solitary confinement. Yeah. That was last year, all through last year.
What's Brixton Police Station like these days?
Busy, very busy, big, lots of activity, lots going on. Got a lot of like knife and gun crime in that area. You've got a big command centre down there in Lambeth somewhere that you see on the police documentary shows, where they kind of control and monitor and observe what's going on in Brixton with the CCTV, and then directing with their comms channels, you know, the units to the ground and helicopters and armed police and stuff like that. Yeah, it's quite interesting stuff, really. But yeah, they locked me up in Thameside, saying, and then I got the recall paperwork. I was recalled for pursuing complaints against the forensic psychologist through the correct and proper channels. They're accusing me of harassment. The YouTube video, the response video to the Channel 4 Crime and Punishment series, I'm going to wipe the disease of IPP off the face of the earth. And because a girl I dated said I was a bit controlling, yeah, they recalled me for those.
Waste of taxpayers' money.
Yeah, it is waste of taxpayers' money, yeah.
So anyone else who's arrested then, you go in front of a judge and you get, you try and bail out, and then you have like all these hearings where motions are filed on both sides, and then you have a sentencing. I'm sorry, you have a trial or a plea bargain, and then like a sentencing. So if you're recalled as an IPP, do you get to go to court and present your side of the story or anything like that, or is it just a done deal?
So that report that I mentioned with those 3 reasons on for recall, the YouTube, I'm a bit controlling and making a complaint, that is the be all and end all. I mean, it's the holy gospel, it's the be all and end all Part A recall report.
So there's no opportunity for you to get a lawyer to present your side of the story?
The first and only opportunity for me to challenge the appropriateness of the recall, the reasonableness of the recall, the lawfulness of the recall, and the lawfulness of the ongoing detention and the information in that Part A recall report will be at a parole board hearing, which could be between 1 and 2 or even more years from the day that I get recalled. If on the day of the parole hearing it comes to fruition that the information contained in that Part A recall report, which is none of it is verified at the time, if it comes to fruition at the parole board hearing that information is false, there's no accountability on the probation service. They're completely exempt from accountability. You're re-released without an apology, and that's it. Now the problem is that like people who know the intricacies of the system know this. So I put myself on offer, Shaun, putting myself all over the internet and talking about these issues, making enemies in the civil service, making enemies in the National Probation Service. They don't like it that I have an opinion. They don't like it that I challenge their system. They don't like it that I challenge the political order. They don't like it. It's like, how dare you have an opinion? You're not allowed an opinion. You're an ex-prisoner. And I just don't know. I had a whole year to think about this. Was it political? Was it in-house? Was the guy instructed to shut me down? It doesn't make any sense. My solicitor, Dean Kingham, who is a former parole board judicial member, he's the creme de la creme. He is, leading prison law solicitors up there with Simon Creighton in England and Wales. As soon as he read my recall paperwork, he said, "This is a stitch-up recall.
Totally.
It doesn't make no sense." So I've had to kind of battle with this, the uncertainty and the not knowing who made the order to shut me down and silence me. I was recalled indefinitely for just having an opinion. Going back to your original question, at this juncture in 2021, I can be detained on the street without committing an offence. I can be locked up indefinitely, in theory, potentially for the rest of my life. And the reason that I'm here today talking about it on the True Crime podcast with you, Shaun Attwood, and the reason that despite the suffering of myself, and that my life is continuously being ripped apart by talking about this sentence, the reason that I keep talking about this issue is so that it is because that could happen to you. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. It could happen to the next generation. So I'm trying to talk about it so that so people understand. We've got now 1,400 IPPs on recall, plus the 2,100, 2,200 who've never been released. Nearly all of them are over tariff now. So you've got 3,500 people locked up in England and Wales serving IPP sentences that were banned at Strasbourg, the highest court on the continent, condemned as arbitrary, inhumane. And just in the last couple of weeks, after a report by the Prison Reform Trust, Amnesty International have now broke ranks. They were previously not willing to make a comment. They've now broke ranks and condemned the British government for this arbitrary sentence, and said that they need to release these prisoners. The year that I just spent in custody, gone.
What was the day you arrived in HMP Thameside, and what was it like?
I arrived there on the 7th of January 2020. Is horrendous. You're immediately on lockdown, 23.5-hour bang up because of the gangs. You got all the gangs from South London, like Brixton 6-7 gang members, who have all got beef and issues with other gangs, postcode wars and stuff like this. So you're all separated, and you're brought out a handful at a time to go onto the exercise yard. On the induction unit, induction unit is standard 23.5-hour lockdown until you get moved onto the other wings.
What security level were you in the beginning?
So I'm still classed as a CCAT prisoner.
So did you get assigned to your own cell?
No, they put me in a double cell. I had all these different cellmates coming and going. They're all smoking Black Mamba Spice.
So your first cellmate, what was that like?
My first cellmate was actually a guy from Estonia. He was really cool. And we just spent the night like talking about my activism, and we were talking about, he's very charismatic and funny. And he was just saying, you need to stop, man. You need to stop. Nelson Mandela, he already sacrificed for us, man. He's just really funny. Yeah. So
how long was he in with you for?
Just a couple of days, and then I got some other guy from Essex. He was just really chilled out, and but I was shell shocked. I mean, I was just in a state of like shock. Where I'm just, I can't really comprehend what's happening to me. I've now been locked up twice now without committing a crime. So it's really challenging. My mental health deteriorated straight away. I'd only been in there 4 days. I got moved to the unit, the main unit, C lowers. I was on that unit one day, and the guy above in a cell, he cut his throat. He bled out in the cell. His cellmate got arrested for murder. Then they said it was suicide. Was it murder? Was it suicide? I mean, who knows? Who knows what the truth is in these, with these things that happen in these deep, dark corners of the British penal system. But he died. All the police and the ambulances were there. You could see them out the window. I knew it was something heavy because of the amount of vehicles, emergency response vehicles. So he died. There was initially I coped with it. What happened initially? I coped with it quite well because I was sending you some writing that I was doing. Like initially, I coped with it quite well. I managed to get onto the education thing on the business class, and it was all like 18, 20-year-olds, these young kids from London, and so I just started kind of like mentoring them stuff and trying to help them, and not by telling them what to do, but just by listening to them, Shaun, and trying to understand their psychology and trying to understand kind of where they're at this time in their life. And I started writing it all down. I started investigating and writing down about the drill scene, the London drill scene. And like basically I kind of concluded and determined that on the whole, the London drill scene is a positive thing in a sense of it's given an abandoned youth in modern Britain a collective voice where they can say in the mainstream the struggles that they're going through. So I kind of saw it as a positive thing.
Yeah, we had Skengdo and AM on
I
this.
watched it. Yeah. I watched it a few weeks ago. Yeah. And I was deeply troubled, by listening to these kids' stories that walk into the shop with your mum. You can 18 years old in your own area, you can end up being murdered.
Any of the stories that particularly struck you that you can remember?
Yeah, that these kids at 18 years old are risking murder to walk to the shop, Shaun, risking murder, and they're not
because of postcode wars over the illegal drugs market created by government policy.
Yeah. And again, these examples, these real life examples that are causing this harm and impacting children for lifelong periods where they can't get their education because of our ridiculous, counterproductive, draconian drug laws. And I just found it fascinating. And look, I know when I see a bad kid, I know I've been locked up in prisons all over England. I've been locked up in secure units, young offenders institutions, prisons, dangerous prisons. I've seen a lot of violence, a lot of death, suicide, bloodshed. I've seen a lot of abuse, systematic abuse, torture. And I know when I see a bad kid, and these kids were not bad kids. Thameside was full of kids in prison for possession of a knife.
What's the sentence for that usually?
It could range 2 years, a year, 18 months, a year. They might get caught with a bit of weed as well, but I couldn't believe, I've never seen anything like it. The volume of children in prison for possession of a knife, I've never seen anything like it. And now they're in the prison. They're in the prison now. Our young offenders institutions, I see a lot of kids coming from Feltham. So our young offenders institutions in England and Wales, I mean, they've been churning out a conveyor belt of lifetime chronic recidivists for decades. And this kind of medieval type survivalism of child brutality and violence that we see today in 2021 in Feltham Young Offenders Institution, it's not that different from 120, 130 years ago. It just isn't. It's not that much different.
How are the prisoners on the Black Mamba Spice behaving?
The Black Mamba Spice problem in the modern British penal system is an epidemic. They cannot control it. It's a highly potent fish tranquilizer drug that immediately comatoses people if they take too much of it.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I see it with my cellmate. He was smoking it all the time.
Which cellmate was that?
When I was on C lowers, they put me in another double cell with this guy smoking tea bags and spice, and I kept telling him to stop smoking. I don't want it in the cell with me, and he kept doing it. Then I'm arguing with him. It was just horrible. Yeah.
So how do you negotiate that? Because it's just disrespectful. It's in your face, but he wants to do it. Does that end up in a fighting situation, or are you just trying to calm it down?
With me, I kind of suppress things, and I can be quite passive sometimes, and it'll build up and build up and build up, and then I'll go from passive to aggressive. Although, I mean, I won't be violent, but I will.
You can only be pushed so far if that's in your face, because you're getting the contact high off it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's no windows because they don't open, then they're kind of blocked up as well, and they're just little holes. So he's smoking this tea bag with Black Mamba and zoning out on the bed. And I'm just sitting at the desk writing. I'm just writing nonstop, writing. And I'm reading Malcolm X and writing. And he ended up having a fit in the cell, like a fit on the spice, and all the TV got broken and stuff. And
he was headbutting the TV, or
he just went crazy in the cell, and he was saying that the Germans are coming.
What race was he?
He's a white kid from Peckham.
The Germans are coming.
Called Ratface, yeah, from Peckham.
Yeah. Did you get rid of him because he wigged out? Did they take him away in a straitjacket?
Yeah, I told him he needs to leave actually, and he did go to the office with his stuff and say that he wants to come out the cell. And I'd repeatedly been asking the officers, can I move? And they were just like, nah, everyone wants a single cell. The prison is so overcrowded now that they're putting everyone in double cells, Shaun. It's so difficult to get a single. So, yeah, they got rid of him. And then there's a drug trafficker, a Turkish fella, who went to 8 choppers, and I managed to get into his cell. But the lady there, I'd gone over to her and I said, look, the cell's free. Can I get in there? And she said, yes. And I was like, thank you. And I ran back and I was putting my stuff in the cell. And then a couple of gang members ran up to her and they threw feces in her face, all over her face. Yeah, it's horrendous. Yeah.
What was that about?
I think she knew him from before. They'd known each other from before. Yeah, he threw feces in her face. But I witnessed loads of brutality there. I witnessed the officers beating up like kids and that with weapons, like storming in the cell, beating them up. I witnessed there was a cell opposite me. There was a kid self-harming, and he was cutting up his body and stuff, and they were bandaging him up. And I used to watch through the door and write it all down, take notes and stuff. Because I was doing a daily log. I wrote a daily log every day for a year. I wrote a daily log.
Do you know the kid's story?
No, I mean, I never spoke to him. I just saw a man suffering. He was really suffering, cutting his body up. And then I saw the officers bullying him in packs, really. And it was kind of like, it's the things they're saying outside of his door in his earshot. Like, he's a fucking crank. He's fucking crazy. Oh, is it that fucking nutcase again? Like, these are the people responsible for your duty of care. And when you're going through delirium like that, to the point where your mental health is deteriorated so much that you're harming yourself with razor blades and cutting your body to regain a sense and a feeling of control, and you hear the people who have the responsibility of your care talking like that, it's a very, very lonely, sad and dark existence, Shaun. Yeah, and I saw a lot of that there. Saw a lot of corruption. The prison officers were bringing the drugs in. It was the prison officers who were bringing the drugs into that prison by their associations with some of these street gangs in the outside from North and South London.
There's a lot of heroin still.
Nah,
Spice is just dominating.
Spice, mobile phones, and tobacco. Yeah, and it's just spice. Yeah, spice. Yeah, I haven't seen heroin in prison for ages. But they then what happened was the COVID thing hit.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, you just set the table of this just like horrible conditions, and then pandemic.
Yeah,
it just gets worse.
Yeah, they shut down the prison system. I had my last visits, I think it's Saturday, March the 21st. We got a piece of paper under our door on the Monday, the 23rd, saying the Ministry of Justice shut down the whole prison system. They shut it all down. 23.5 hour bang up, coming out for 20 minutes, no more education. All that was done, all finished. And then on the Friday, they opened my door. There's 3 officers. They said, this prison is not for you. You've been moved. So I said, where am I going? They said, they're going to the Mount. So they put me on a van and they sent me to the Mount. And I remember as I was on the van going to the Mount prison after they processed me to leave the prison, and I just saw this kind of apocalyptic, like surreal sci-fi kind of like ghost town. Every road that I went down, I just see a ghost town. I see like 2 or 3 people in masks going into supermarkets. And it's like
Black Mirror.
Yeah, it was just crazy, man. Arrived at the Mount, and I ended up on Nash A on the Mount. After induction, I put me in another double cell with a kid doing 16 years for guns and conspiracy to rob and crack and heroin. And then they put me onto Nash A. So you got Nash A and Nash B, these 2 massive like housing units. People on the yard, like walking around, training and stuff. And you walk into the unit, and it is just loud drill music, multiple different stereos, all like full volume.
It's crazy.
Just playing drill like this clusterfuck of noise.
I can't believe they allow that, because in America it's all headsets.
Nah, not in the Mount. No,
you can't hear anything.
They let people have big stereos there. Yeah.
Why was the security level there?
So it's a CCAT training prison. So it's a prison where under normal circumstances you would have to work. People doing sentences for drug supply, burglary, robbery, lifers who've committed murder, who are progressing through the system from the higher secure establishments. And then it's a step before the semi-open prisons like the DCATs, where they would then go out to work and stuff like that. 23.5-hour lockdown. I'm losing my mind now, like I'm in the cell. No one's coming to see me about the sentence. No one's talking to me about the recall. I've got no release date, no parole date. I'm locked up in a cell for 23.5 hours a day with this kid who's just constantly watching Jason Statham movies and like all these action movies with all these sounds like psh, 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 like just one after the other, watching all these films with all his mates coming to the door every day, banging the door and shouting and screaming and talking rubbish. And I was living in like a 1 meter square space like this, just reading. I was reading Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene. I was blitzing that book. Yeah, I was reading that at the time. And the way that I got through that particular situation was I just started to study them, like subjects. Like that's what Robert Greene was telling me to do, like, and trying to like work out what crime they've committed by the way they dress and talk and stuff. Like, and I'd stand at the top landing and just watch them, and I'd watch the human psychology of these groups and these kids and stuff. That's what I was doing. Yeah, that's how I got through it. And then I was just losing my mind in there, man. It's like it's fucking horrendous, man. Honestly, Shaun, it was so bad. I ended up having a Mexican standoff on a netting. Or like coming out, so I'm not banging up. I took all my stuff out, my books and stuff. I said, I can't sit in that cell anymore.
You refused to lock down?
Yeah, I refused to go back in there.
Did they call the backup then?
Yeah, they call loads of them. They locked down the whole unit. They were all coming down the sides. There's like 10 of them here, 10 of them there. I stood near the camera. The camera's here. And there's a negotiator in front of me. They got their cameras. And I started giving a speech into the camera. That's what I've done. I was saying that IPP is the biggest and worst mass miscarriage of justice ever witnessed in modern Western European criminal justice and political history. I was saying that you need to release these prisoners. Like, it's an injustice. People are dying. If you wanna record that, then record that. I said, I'm not going back in a cell. I can't be in a double cell anymore. I'm losing my mind. And it's difficult because I can't say what's going on in the cell. I can't say he's smoking weed. I can't say about the other people. I'm constantly like, trying to stick to the moral code, yeah. But then trying to protect myself as well, like these conflicts. And to be honest, I don't really give a fuck about the moral code, but I'm in prison and there's things you can and can't say.
Convict code, yeah.
But I don't really care about it really, Shaun, but there's just things you do and things you don't do and things you say and things you can't say. So, but that's creating like huge conflict and problems for me because I'm not willing to tell them why I need to move. Like I'm having all these cellmates who are taking drugs and stuff. And so I just kept it real and kept it moving. And they put me on to the Lakes unit, which was a well-being unit for people with like mental health problems and all that. And I was on that unit for a few months.
Did they try and put you on meds?
No, I don't take meds. No, I don't take meds. I just white knuckle it. Yeah, I white knuckle it. Read, write. I was doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of writing. I was reading like Robert Greene, Socrates, Laws of Human Nature, Einstein, some neuroscience, some physics, Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr. I started writing. I was doing the daily log. I started writing manuscripts, the IPP diaries. I wrote 3 manuscripts about the IPP sentence and about stuff that I was going through and everything that I was seeing. and then I was just living in a concrete tunnel for 23 hours a day, locked up in a concrete tunnel with 30 men. Association, table tennis, pool, all them things are done now. I mean, they're history. You don't get any of that anymore. You're just locked in a cell. And then you're just being bullied by 21-and-a-half-year-old females in packs.
So, how long were you in the mental health section for?
From May the 13th until November the 23rd last year. I'm watching short tarified PPs with 6-month tariffs in their 15th year, and they're cutting their ears clean off, like with razors, slashing the tops of their ears off. They're severing entire fingers, screaming, covering the whole cells in blood. They're screaming into the night. They're skinny like this, like skeletons. Their minds are fucked on the spice. This is the modern British penal system. This is the IPP sentence. This is reality. There's. I mean, I just can't think of one civilization on Earth, anywhere in the free world, Shaun, where people are locked up for attempted robbery of a coat or a mobile phone who are going through this for 15 years in a prison. I mean, I can't think of any example.
Do people kill themselves in the mental health section?
There's a lot of self-harm in there. There's a lot of self-harm and it was such a claustrophobic existence. You know, you hear everything and you hear all the officers coming and they're goading them and mocking them and encouraging them. And
the officers are encouraging them to self-harm?
Yeah. I did try and speak to the officers about this on a number of occasions. I do feel like I made some progress.
How would you approach that?
It's very difficult. So I just started. So there was one called Mr. G. There's a guy called Mr. G. I said I'd give him a shout out as well, Mr. G. You know, he was all right. He watched the podcast. I told him to go and watch the podcast. He said he watched it, enjoyed it, and you know, there was other officers there, and they were. I see a kid self-harming. You know, he's carving himself up, and he's covered in blood, and they're calling him a fucking sausage and a fucking wanker and a retard. The officers, and then he's trying to cut his fingers off and stuff. They kind of made it. It was kind of their fault, really, and. So I kind of determined, I was speaking to these officers and stuff just on a level and just trying to understand why they were doing it. And I think it was their way. They were trying to say that it was their kind of way of coping because they don't have the skills and the expertise and the training. And it was really difficult for me because it really impacted and affected me, Shaun, to watch these people suffering when I was trying to survive myself, and it really affected me, and it really affected my ability to kind of look after myself as well because of the emotion involved in watching them suffer and not being able to do anything about it and the helplessness.
It's affecting me just hearing it. I can't imagine how you feel. I'm sure it's affecting the people watching this.
Yeah, it is horrible. It was so emotional, like watching it, and long story short, I kind of learned. So Mandela was talking about the importance of educating our oppressor, and that we have to educate the oppressor. So I kind of tried to incorporate that kind of wisdom somehow, and I tried to kind of not see them as abusers, even though they were abusers. And I was watching new prison officers arrive, and then 6 months later turning into abusers. Because they're coming into a philosophy that is entrenched in the DNA of these institutions that goes along the lines of, you know, anybody that comes into custody in the United Kingdom that are detained by the courts are just the absolute scum of the earth. They don't deserve a second chance. They don't deserve any human rights, and they are not even worthy of love. That's it, sadly. And I'd watch officers, and I'd watch them turn into abusers, and I just tried to get to a place of acceptance that I can't blame a prison officer for coming into a job to try and feed their family, and then being kind of affected and infected by the philosophy. They're not going to go against the whole grain, and even though if they did, that would be a good thing. But yeah, I think there might have been some truth in it that that it was kind of their way of coping and stuff. But they were encouraging it, whether consciously or unconsciously. They were definitely encouraging it, and it was horrific. I was going through hell. I was going through extreme suicidal ideation. I was going through extreme insomnia, a kind of like psychosis where I was hallucinating. I was seeing like cockroaches from Aylesbury prison where I was tortured in the cell, but they didn't exist. And I would look like this. I'd see them on the walls. I couldn't sleep. The hopelessness, the helplessness, the despair. I've got all the probation stuff. You're dangerous. You're high risk. All this kind of stuff. Watching what was going on around me, and I had to. The way that I survived it was through writing, and I would sit on the bed, and I would write, and I would write like what now when I read back and look back and read it now was like a stream of consciousness. Like if you read "Love Is Our Code" on my website, if you read that "Love Is Our Code," that was the kind of stuff that I was writing. It's really deep, like, and it would take me to places where I was at peace. It would take me to a place of peace, where I'm completely separated from my thinking, from my mind. It was that powerful where the pen and the ink would become one with myself, and I would bare my soul onto the paper, and it was cathartic and cleansing and powerful and empowering. And that's how I got through it. It's the best way I can describe it, really. Yeah.
Oh, it's really powerful, man.
Yeah.
Well done. Just going inside yourself and finding that, that tool that worked, which was writing. And writing is just not to be underestimated, is it?
Nah.
So cathartic. Nah. Yeah. So were you in the mental health section for the duration, or did you go back to another section before you got released?
No, I was there until I got released. Like, I was there. I was really suffering. I self-harmed once, which is just very unlike me, but it just took me to that kind of place.
What led to that moment then where you just got a bit unhinged?
Just the emotion and the feeling that I've just got absolutely no control over my life. And I'm just feeling like, what's the point anymore, Shaun? Like, I've transformed my life around, like, beyond recognition, and and then they just keep locking me up, and it's tough, man. Like, it's tough. So it's just that feeling of like helplessness and hopelessness, and I just think, well, like, what is the point? I know some of it's self-inflicted because I'm kind of fighting against the system and stuff, but I'm only going through the correct and proper channels that are afforded to me, as per the British Constitution, and these are things that are supposedly there for all of us to be able to exercise as a free nation and a free democracy and stuff. So
just because you've been to prison doesn't mean you don't have the right to freedom of speech.
Well, my case was an Article 10 case. It was unprecedented. There is not, to my knowledge, an Article 10 freedom of expression case that is on record of an indeterminate sentence prisoner on recall. The I've been locked up for making complaints through the correct and proper channels and saying stuff on YouTube videos. So it's an Article 10 case that was all clearly put out in the submissions to the parole board. The day before my parole hearing, I had insomnia all night. I didn't sleep. I had no support for release. Nobody recommended my release. The prison probation, inside and out, they were unreachable. They never came to visit me. They never came to see me. My family was trying to contact them. They never replied. I met the inside probation a couple of times. He recommended that I remain detained indefinitely for another 2 years, and that was too dangerous to be released, even with a robust risk management release plan, and even considering the fact that I'd spent 7.5 years in the community on life license without committing serious harm. He recommended that because of misusing my cell bail in my cell. That's what his reason was, misuse of cell bail. And then the outside one, they're just savage, they're the ones who recalled me. They're saying that I'm now capable of committing murder, that I'm super high risk, that if I'm released, I pose a risk of serious violence to the community. And they caught me to the parole hearing, went to the parole hearing. It was a remote hearing because of the pandemic. So basically I was just in a room with a phone, and I sat opposite the prison probation officer, and we sat opposite each other. I had no support for release. It was a battle to keep my presence of mind. I feel like presence of mind is very important in these situations, but it was a really big challenge, Shaun, and he tried to engage me, the prison probation, who's nailed me to the cross in his report, and I just refused to engage him. I just said to him, "Justice is coming." That's all I said to him. And then I sat down with my notepad and my folder and stuff, and my legal books, and I had to fight for my freedom again, fight for my life in a dim lit corner of Her Majesty's dehumanising warehouse, the Mount Prison in Hemel Hempstead. There was 2 judicial parole board members, Patrick Thomas and another one, two judges. The ones I think was a Birmingham Crown Court judge. It was the only little bit of faith that I had kind of left, was to find some kind of was the moral common sense and logic of these 2 respected parole board members, because across the British criminal justice system, it is one place where you more often than not going to find some moral common sense and logic is with a judge. That was kind of my faith and hope, and so it kicked off. You had the 2 outside probation officers. You had my new one, the guy who recalled me. He passed my case over to someone else to avoid questioning on the parole day. Yeah, because it's quite cowardly, but he was subpoenaed, and the judges said, "No, you recalled him, so you need to come and answer and give your reasons why." So I was up against 2 of them. You had the inside probation opposite me, and my legal counsel, and the 2 judicial parole board members who were at home. This was done remotely on a phone. So my inside probation went first, and the parole board judge said to him, "Explain to him what serious harm is." Serious harm, yeah, life and limb, or long-term, lifelong trauma that is almost impossible to recover from. Okay, and then he said to him, if it is no longer necessary for this person to be detained for the protection of the public because he does not pose serious harm, then we must release him. So he said to him, his first question, "What could this man do in the community to somebody?" And his response, he said, the judge is like, "Sir, what could this man do to somebody in the community? What could he do? Like, what could he do to somebody?" And he's like, he argues. That's what he said, Shaun.
He argues.
He said he argues, yeah. He said he argues with people, and you could hear the judges huffing and puffing and saying, "Good gosh," and they were like, he said, "Sir, we cannot keep people in custody because they argue with people. Thank you very much for your evidence. We don't need to hear anything more from you today." And they just ripped this silly report up in under 4 minutes, Shaun. And so it's not unprecedented or unusual or uncommon for parole board members to kind of challenge probation on their silly reports. But for them, these judges to come out the starting blocks like this, and just rip him to pieces in under 5 minutes. It's something I've never seen before or heard of, right?
Wow.
So, and then they got onto the other two, and they were questioning them, and so he wrote in that Part A recall report that we spoke about at the start of the podcast that he had other information. He was going to bring other information that he had to justify his recall. That the recall was because I had committed serious harm in the community that met the threshold. Harm in the community, sorry, that meets the threshold of serious harm, psychological harm in this regard. And so the judge said, "Where's the evidence?" Let me just have a look. And the judge is like, "No, you've had 11 months. Where is this evidence? Where is it? This man's waited nearly a year on recall. You said you had further evidence that he's committed harm that meets the threshold of serious harm. Where is this evidence, Mr. Probation Officer?" Well, if I let this lady try and find it, and I can answer other questions now, and they're just avoiding it, and didn't have the evidence and didn't come up with any evidence, and still to this very day right now have still not provided any evidence of any wrongdoing, of any breach of license, of any criminal behavior, and then they released me, trebled my restrictions, and without an apology, and put me in a probation hostel with high risk offenders. But it also came out, the probable judges made them go into the system and the probation officer's emails and stuff, and then it came out that they'd actually withheld evidence that was favorable to me from the parole board, and regarding one of the people who was involved in the recall. So I won't name them, because
No
despite
names,
what
yeah.
they've done to me, like, I'll still be mature and protect their anonymity. But they basically, the person emailed the probation and said that, and basically admitted that I hadn't actually done anything wrong, and they hid that evidence from the parole board. They hid that from the prison probation. They hid that from their parole reports. Now, even when it came out that they'd hid that evidence in the parole hearing, Shaun, and this was their error in the sense of, because I would have still been released, but error in the sense of showing themselves up for what they are, they still defended the recall. And in a court of law, even though it's civil procedure rules that a parole board is, so it's based on probability. It's not that a criminal, where beyond reasonable doubt, a parole board is like a civil thing. When you lose a legal argument on that scale, where you've admitted that you hid evidence, and it's come out that you've hid evidence that was favorable to me the whole time, you've hid this evidence, then you still defend the recall. I mean, they lost the respect of the parole board when they did that. And that's when the penny dropped for the inside probation, realizing he'd been duped by the outside ones. And so they released me. They trebled my restrictions. I've got to have monitoring devices put in any of my phones. I've got to give up my SIM cards for inspection. I'm not allowed to delete Google history. So I remember my index offence. I stole £240 with a knife 15 years ago from a shop as a street homeless man. Not to delete Google history. I can't go home. I can't do this. I can't do that. And they released me to approved premises in Brixton. Now, remember when I said to you, the first release, like the movie, the second release, I felt nothing. I knew that I needed to walk out of the gate with no bitterness or anger. And I knew that I had to try and meet this challenge, Shaun. Otherwise, that bitterness and anger would manifest itself into my life in various different ways and affect my relationships, and it can destroy me. So I did everything in my power with the resources inside me as a man to try and meet that challenge. I didn't think I would meet the challenge. I was so upset and fragile. My mind was fragile. So the way that I did that, I did a lot of meditation. But when I say meditation, I don't kind of mean sitting there like this. I mean like rigorous self-examination where I kind of brought everything back to myself, and I kind of reviewed the innermost depths of my soul, and who I am, and just tried to cleanse myself the best that I could. Lots of writing, doing lots of writing and writing it all down and stuff. Doing the kind of like columns of like inventory, like using other resources. I've got like 12-step inventory. I was doing a lot of that. I was doing a lot of prayer, like prolonged, consistent, long periods of prayer, where it would take me to places of peace. Um, and I think I'm quite happy to report that I think I did meet the challenge, because the day that I left, I was really gracious and dignified. I tried my best to be, and I wished them well. These people who I'd watch abuse people, goading them into killing themselves. I wished them well, and I walked to the gate, and I I did everything I could to keep an attitude and a psychological mindset of complete indifference. This day that I'm walking out of the gates of the prison to freedom is nor good nor bad. Only the mind makes it so. Um, a few hours ago, I was laying on my bed in my cell reading. Now I'm driving down the motorway in an SUV. Um, it's just like do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, that's how I kind of dealt with it. And then I went to this probation hostel in Brixton, back to the same jurisdiction, to the probation officers who'd recalled me, who tried to keep me in custody, who'd had their knuckles wrapped by the parole board. And the last thing I'll say before I allow you to interject now is that there are one or two other things about my case that I haven't gone into, that I've kind of missed out, really, but not because I didn't want to talk about them, but it's just like the time, really. And but in the IPP diaries, it will all come out where I'll go into all the specifics about my case, specifically around the character assassinations that they've done, especially around the forensic psychologist, things like this. And Yeah, so they've said they've put me back to this probation hostel back in Lambeth with these probation officers. Yeah.
Well, good job getting through the suicidal thoughts part of it, because that was the lowest for me when I was facing 200 years, and I just slash my wrists and bleed out. But then I looked at the photos of my mum, dad, girlfriend, and sister, and it was the thought of my mum getting a call saying your son's dead in a foreign prison. I broke down and started crying, and I just couldn't bear the thought of putting my mum through that. So what got you through the suicidal thoughts phase? How did you psychologically lift out of that?
The way that I got through that phase and lifted out of it was the way that I described, with the writing, um, and how that empowered me and took me to a place of complete peace. The issue that I had was that I was now at a place psychologically and mentally, and approaching a place of acceptance, that there is more intelligence and more graciousness and more dignity in taking my own life than continue to live on like this in a concrete box, living in a coffin with some rabbit food thrown in my door every day at 4 o'clock onto the floor, and then my steel door shut, with no hope, being character assassinated, we're completely helpless. I, 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 the studying the philosophers that I was studying, and it was just that's just how it materialized at that time, Shaun. Like, I was seriously starting to think about taking my own life, because as an act of 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 dignity, an act of human dignity, and an act of grace, and an act of intelligence. You know, that's what Martin Luther King Jr. says, when he says, I would rather die on Highway 55 with my conscience intact than to continue to live on every day defeated. And I understand what he means by that. I completely understand what he means by that.
It's a function of sentence length, isn't it? And if it's indeterminate, then it's just a total head wreck. Because what led to my point was first year, second year on sentence, they're adding more charges, they're adding more prospective sentencing, and then in the end, it's like they made it clear it's going to be 200 if you lose at trial. So for you then, because every month you're in court and it just goes worse and worse and worse. So for you then, I imagine there must be a disproportionate amount of suicides among the IPP prisoners because of that 99 years or whatever it is life alone. Have you found, I mean, I know you study this intensely. Have you found what the suicide rate is for IPP prisoners?
Yeah, so the self-harm and suicide statistics for IPPs are just staggering. They're just absolutely frightening. They are. There's been recorded there's about 65 suicides with IPPs. I actually don't think that's a correct statistic. The Ministry of Justice are very shady about the freedom of information requests that they receive from lead campaigners like Donna Mooney and Shirley DeBono on this subject. I think it's probably around 150 suicides or deaths that have been caused by the sentence, because I know for a fact that there's over about 140, 150 recorded deaths of IPP prisoners, but they're marking them down as natural causes, Shaun. So like Charlotte Noakes, for example, she got recorded at the inquest as natural causes. She got a 15-month tariff or something. She left to rot on herself for 10 years. And then, she got found dead in her cell. It was the sentence that caused that death, but it gets recorded as natural causes. Of the 2,100 or so IPPs who remain detained indefinitely with no right to release at this juncture in 2021 in prisons in England and Wales, mostly men, like I said, 97, 98% of which are over tariff. Probably 500 of them have done 5 times their tariff. Over 200 have done between 8 and 15 years over their tariff. I would say between 70 and 80% of these people are self-harming in what can only be described as a modern-day bloody massacre. I really think it will be recorded down in the history books of this. And for the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland QC, to not confront this for what it is and to address it for what it is and to deal with it for what it is, I just don't understand and just cannot comprehend or grasp or fathom why or how he is in politics.
It's just a completely uncaring system.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's hope at the minute with the Amnesty International condemnation of the sentence, but I didn't think we'd be in a position here where the current elected parliament would be leaving men with 4-month tariffs in prison for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years. But it looks like they are at the minute. Yeah.
So what was the date of your release then? And how have you found it since then? It sounds like it's been a minefield.
So I got released on the 23rd of November to Brixton. I was then at the last stages of my degree. So I had 10 essays to complete to graduate in May with my Bachelor of Arts. I was really, looking forward to getting this done.
Bachelor of Arts in what?
In criminology and psychology. Then I wanted to go on to a master's and do some postgrad study, maybe in artificial intelligence and philosophy, or maybe theology, or just to establish myself as a criminological scholar. So I kind of cracked on with that. I got 3 essays done. I set up a ministry, Blessed Are the Peacemakers, World Secure Environments, and Community Ministry with 6 strands. of homeless outreach, publishing.
Is that what your new YouTube channel is called? Blessed Are the Peacemakers?
Yeah, I got two. Like I shut down the old one. I've got a new one, Pep Watson, and then I got Blessed Are the Peacemakers.
Pep, just PEP.
Yeah, Pep Watson.
So we'll put those links in the description if people are watching.
Cheers, man. Yeah, so I've got the ministry YouTube channel, the new YouTube channel. So yeah, I developed these blueprints when I was in custody. I wrote all the blueprints for the ministry with the 6 strands, with the 4 mission, aims, and activities, kind of philosophy. So it's a 4-tier, 6-strand ministry. So I catapulted the Martin Luther King Jr. philosophy into the 21st century. That was kind of the thinking behind it. And I sourced all the philosophers that Martin Luther King Jr. Got his philosophy of love and kindness and compassion from, and I brought that into the 21st century. Built this ministry philosophy, tied it into the stuff that I was doing anyway, like consultancy and things like this with the patients and prisoners that I've been working with. Started recruiting some volunteers, working with them. They've been really good, building like a little team together. I've had huge complications with it. With the guy that I was working with, he went a bit rogue. He was kind of trying to jump on what I was doing as kind of like a business where he could kind of make money out of it. And I don't care about money, Shaun. I care about people. I don't care about money. I care very much about people, and I care very much about the social crisis in modern Britain. I care very much about the need for change. I'm not talking about reform. I'm talking about the complete deconstruction and reconstruction of a power imbalanced British criminal justice system that, by way of design, systematically targets, punishes, demonizes, and criminalizes the oppressed and people from marginalized communities, and predominantly the poor, whilst at the same time it protects the wealthy, the rich, the elite, the powerful, who consistently avoid justice and the battering ram of justice because of their friends and resources and manipulations of the law. We've been talking about reform since 1985 in the Gladstone report. And what has really changed? Like I gave the example at Feltham, like nothing has really changed. We need to tear the whole system down and reconstruct it. This is something I believe with conviction. It's something that I want to keep fighting for as long as there's air in my lungs. I really believe in it. I think it potentially has to be political, where it has to be kind of constructed and deconstructed and reconstructed within the political context. So I was building a ministry. I was meeting with local community leaders, Battersea Church, ministers. I was in Zoom meetings with bishops, top bishops in Great Britain and Ireland, online. Meeting those people was really interesting. And they were forcing me to go into Lambeth Probation in Tier 5 lockdown when Boris Johnson had said, nobody's allowed to go out unless it's like super emergency. And this probation officer, she's forcing me to go in there to Tier 5 lockdown for face-to-face appointments. It's just horrific. I was getting like insomnia the day that I was supposed to perform my appointment. She was making me go down there every Tuesday. I was going down there. I was going into a state of panic, a state of hyperarousal, intrusion, trauma, flashbacks, vivid, violent flashbacks, where I have to like go up against the wall and like crawl down the wall, crying, just from going into a probation appointment. Like, this is what it was doing to me. I've got a diagnosis for PTSD, like high-end PTSD, which I had the last time I was out. And I'm pleading with her. I'm saying to her, this is the impact that it's having on me. And there's just no compassion there or nothing. And then I was asking to go home. They weren't letting me go home. She gave me a warning for what happened was, this is all happening right now, as has happened in the last 3 weeks. So my move on date was the 1st of February. So I found a flat. I used all the resources and the skills that I've learned, that they taught me that I needed to learn from whether it was prison, whether it's thinking skills, solving skills, whether it's utilizing my support network, um, to find this flat. I found a flat near Brixton. It was a lovely flat, studio flat. I sorted it all out myself, the local housing officer. I sorted it all out with the rent deposit scheme. Sorted it all out so I could move in there. I had everything: a bed, a double bed, a shower, cooker. I had everything, and I met the landlord, Mohammed. He's a very nice man. We met and shook hands, and I was ready to pick up the keys. And I sent this address to the probation officer, and she refused to let me live there, saying it was a bad area in West Norwood. Yeah.
Like, you can be like they say, it's hard, isn't it, if you've got a criminal record, to get anywhere?
Yeah, I smashed it. Yeah, I got a flat and that. And when she did that, I realized that like they're gunning for me, and it kind of hit me. It kind of hit me that they're still gunning for me. I kind of had a hope that they'd accepted professionally the decision of the parole board, but it became quite clear and evident that they weren't accepting it. Then she started. She said that when she told me that, she recorded it down as like a warning that I'd been rude to her when she told me I couldn't live there. So what I did, because I'd realized that what she was doing, that she was trying to stop me and prevent me from rebuilding my life, and that they were still gunning for me, I was like, I need to get out of this borough, this jurisdiction. So I'll give you my mum's address. My mum's address is a foolproof address that hasn't got a parking ticket on it for 40 years. I'm giving you the foolproof address. And she was devastated, she's like, oh. So I was like, that's my address and I'm moving there. And she's extending my stay at the hostel, trying to do everything she can to keep me there as long as possible, to nitpick me on these tiny little warnings. Even though I'm flying, I mean, what I've achieved in the short number of weeks that I've been released is nothing short of astonishing. I've built a world ministry, like from nothing, from a blueprint that I wrote in prison, which is 70, 80 pages long. And I'm now putting it into practice. We're helping people. We're hiring volunteers, working as consultants. We're making a difference in society already in rapid time. And she refused my mum's address, saying I'm not allowed to go back there. She spent an hour on the phone to my mum, interrogating her, asking her about her friends, asking her if she's on the dole, asking her if she's on benefits, does she own the property, who comes to the house, just trying to find like one little thing, demanding that she does a video tour of every single room in the house. My mum just said, no, I'm not doing it. This is my personal home. This is ridiculous. And she made my kind of mum think that, this is on the Thursday. She said, I'll get back to you on the Monday. She didn't get back to her. My mum was sitting there waiting. She didn't get back to her. Child sex predators are allowed to go home to their mums. Rapists are allowed to go home to their mums. Domestic convicted terrorists are allowed to go home to their mums.
But if you're argumentative, you can't go home to your mum.
They wouldn't let me go home to my mum's. And then she's saying and then the time in the hostel plus the extension of a week had run out. So now the time's run out. Now she's saying I'm homeless and that I've intentionally made myself homeless. She's saying I'm homeless. I'm saying I'm not homeless. Like I can give you another 5 addresses I can go to. I've got other addresses. I'm giving you addresses. You're not approving them. What can I do? I came out on the 23rd of November. I made an application for PIP for the PTSD and ESA for the for living in a hostel. And after 5 weeks, I did the phone assessment, and they said that I shouldn't have applied for ESA, but I only applied for ESA because the GP advised me that I should apply for ESA. So I was wrongly advised. So I didn't get a payment. I then applied for universal credit immediately. PIP takes 3 months. Universal credit first payment came another 5 weeks. So I'd gone 10 weeks. So the first and only payment I had from universal credit whilst being out in the community of of £314 on the 24th of January. The probation's ringing me up, demanding that I hand over every penny of it to the hostel for rent, for £29 a week rent, service charge. And if I don't, then I'm breaching my license. And I was saying, but I don't have any money. I don't have any money. And she's demanding that I give this money. And I refused to give it. I refused to give them to because I didn't have any money, Shaun. And then it all happened so quickly. She gave me a warning, a formal license warning for leaving the hostel 7 minutes early. I left one morning at 7 minutes early before the curfew, but it's a trick really, because I'd left between 6 and 7 in the morning about 15 times and they hadn't said anything. Now they're saying I'm breaching a curfew and all this for leaving 7 minutes early in the morning. And then other bosses were getting involved, like chief probation officers, and I'm like, they're going to recall me again. They're going to recall me again. And so she gave me another. They were ringing me and they were saying, "Look, you are homeless in the morning, and I'm living my life like hour by hour, and I'm seeing my life being completely ripped apart. I've got no control over my life. I can see them building a case for a potential third life-destroying recall without committing a crime, and I haven't even come out of the hostel, and they're ringing my phone saying, "Are you going to pay this money?" And I'm raising the money to pay them, like our family and friends and stuff. And I'm in tears, like giving them the money. I remember giving them like the last £3.57 out of my pocket and giving it to them with this money and saying like, "I don't have any more money. Are you happy now?" Like, and I just, so I left there, Shaun. I left. I was getting suicidal. The insomnia was becoming so torturous. Every little noise, the door, I'm thinking it's the police. They're going to come and get me. And so I just walked out of there and didn't go back. Yeah, I just walked out of there. So they phoned my mum on the 12th of February, which is like nearly 3 weeks ago now, and they said that there's a warrant out for his arrest for.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Kidding me?
Nah, man. They said there's a warrant out for your arrest for not going back to the hostel. But I just couldn't go back there because it was just so torturous, and I could see that they were trying to recall me, and that there was nothing I could do about it. And I didn't want to end up in prison, and thinking the whole time that I was in there, like I could have just left. So I'm now a fugitive. I'm wanted by the police. I'm wanted by the police in all over England,
What?
Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the UK. I'm wanted by the police in the UK, for a third life-destroying recall, without committing a crime.
Oh my God, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's my current situation. Yeah.
So that would have been at least another 1 or 2 years back in the system.
Yeah.
Just going through the bullshit again to go to a hearing to find out you were stitched up again.
Yeah.
So they just got you going round and round in circles. And they can just do that to you endlessly because of the IPP thing.
Yeah, like my mother's just distraught now. She's just like, well, when you get arrested, you're just going to go back and we've got to go through it all again. And she's like, I don't understand the point in this. I don't understand the point in it. And why aren't the probation officers held to account? And so, yeah, I've been like stuck in a safe house for the last like nearly 3 weeks, 18, 19 days.
Jesus.
I just sitting there, and I'm still building a ministry, recruiting volunteers, sending in art materials to patients in hospitals. What else am I doing? That's it really. Cooking. I've been cooking. And then writing. Been doing a bit of writing the last few days. I've worked like not today, but yesterday, day before, and the day before. I've done like 3 like long shifts, like working on my ministry and stuff on my website. And I think with what's happened with the guy that kind of came on board with my ministry, I think I'm gonna shift away from the ministry approach of trying to uplift a spiritually bankrupt modern Britain with the gospel of Jesus Christ, King of Kings, and instead shift away from that. Although I still believe we need to reconnect in this land of faith and glory with family values and love and kindness and compassion and helping each other and address this fractured family unit problem. But I think with what's happened to me lately is that I'm going to shift away from that, and I'm going to start coming from a more political approach, and I'm going to continue down a path that can potentially become somewhat of a political movement. I believe that this is potentially like meant to be. It's the only way I can kind of try and make sense of it all, really, Shaun. Like, because I know that I don't deserve to be locked up in custody. Um, the road to redemption is very long. Maybe there's some meaning to it, meaning for it, some meaning why this is happening to me. The last few days I've been really trying to bring everything back to myself, and trying to determine, like, is it really me? Is it really me? Like, that all these things are happening to, like, do I deserve to keep going in and out of prison? And it's hard for me to kind of accept that's the case, really, for the crime I committed.
Well, there needs to be a campaign to bring your story to a bigger audience of the public, perhaps through major media, because these bastards that are doing these things to you, when it's exposed to the tax-paying public, they're going to be shown to be the criminals, not you. So have you got any media connections, perhaps people watching this who have media connections? Are you working, doing anything with the media coming up, or?
I'm in touch, very close touch with one or two people, and I am working on one or two things with mainstream media, prominent broadcasters, and let's just hope that turns into something. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, that's kind of my hope, really. But I've been talking and communicating with and liaising with them, and telling them the severity of the situation I'm in the last couple of weeks. And, I can emphatically and categorically say that these mainstream broadcasters, with the information that I've provided them, and the footage that I've provided them, they're absolutely blown away, really, by
I'm not
what's
surprised.
happening.
I'm
Yeah,
absolutely blown away just listening to your story
they're
right now. I
really
mean,
shocked. Yeah.
man, you're such a good speaker. From the very first time we did the podcast, that was really harrowing and hard hitting. But now you've just gone to the next level of like being like a Malcolm X, type, Martin Luther King type speaker. And it's just really moving, and it's just so articulate what you say. The personal story combined with the important social message about the horror of what's going on for these IPP prisoners. This is why you're here. You just said that maybe there's a purpose to all this. Your suffering is the price to get this out there and perhaps end it, because it is so powerful what you're saying. And I'm sure the people watching this have been sat here riveted and are absolutely, it's resonated with them. What do you want to say to them in conclusion, and what could they perhaps do to help you?
Well, what you just said is very kind. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's nice to hear those kind words. I do perhaps agree with you. I believe that if we are wanting to and wishing to uplift society, uplift humanity, then history shows us that there has to be a sacrifice for that. And I do feel like putting myself on offer, since I've been an activist and challenging the IPP sentence. The way that I've done it has led to me having to sacrifice, like with my liberty, for example, on the last recall. And I, I don't regret it. I don't regret any video that I've made. YouTube have never had a problem with any of my videos. If you don't like them, don't watch them. Um, I'm very steely in my conviction that I or the only thing that I did um, that led to that last recall, not this third one, the second one, with the YouTube videos, was I was raising issues or awareness of issues that are very important, critical even to the positive social progress of this land of faith and glory, the United Kingdom of Great Britain. I believe that um, the issues that are raising are that important, and I don't apologise for that. I I have had to sacrifice. Like, I don't see my family, I don't see my child, I don't see my nieces, I don't get to enjoy relationships. I can't even walk down the road now without like looking over my shoulder. Um, my life is very intense now. I don't have no freedom of movement. Um, but the opportunity to sacrifice for the greater cause of good and for justice, equality, and freedom, and to uplift our brothers and sisters around us in modern Britain, the opportunity to sacrifice for those things is something that I'm very grateful for and appreciative for, and something that I I will embrace, Shaun. I have a gift for writing. I have a gift for possibly talking. I mean, I'm very humbled and touched by the guys that you've likened me with. These are great orators, aren't they? And so yeah, I'm pleased that I can use these qualities that I've got to try and raise awareness uh, of these issues. So um, I don't know what's ahead of me. I don't know what's going to happen. I do feel quite lonely at the moment, um, quite disorientated. Um, but I feel quite empowered that I took the decisive action not to continue to be tortured in that hostel and walk away. That was quite empowering. Um, I don't really see it as a reckless decision or anything like that. It's just something that I had to do at the time because I just couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't take it, and I had the option. And people are saying you can't do that, and I was like, well, I can do that. I've got places to go. I can get up and leave and walk out, and I can go somewhere, and I'll be safe, and I'll be safer there than I am here. What can people do to help me? Um, I mean, the yeah, I mean, we'll put my links into the description. Um, I mean, I don't ask for money or anything like that. I don't care about money, but my biggest problem is source of income. So if someone can chuck me for a tenner for food or something, that would be appreciative. I'm kind of living just day by day at the minute. Um, I'm not really using the internet a lot because I know I can get tracked and stuff. So I'm just doing writing really. People can help me by standing up in their communities and talking about issues that they see in their communities that they don't agree with, to try and do something to work towards the necessary deconstruction and reconstruction that is required in our societies. Because I feel very strongly that when we're silent, Shaun, in the face of oppression and human suffering and abuse, um, then we are as guilty as the perpetrators, and so we become perpetrators also. And the silence from the criminal justice system in modern Britain with regard to the horrific, indefensible, and barbaric IPP sentence is just absolutely mind blowing. We are making perpetrators of evil and cruelty and barbarism out of good prison chaplains and out of 21-and-a-half-year-old, prison officers who were not bad people. So this is something we need to get to grips with. There's a lot of suffering in our country. Everywhere we go, length and breadth of the nation, I see mental health. I see suffering. I see injustice. I see unfairness. I see people suffering, whether it's Brixton or Harlesden or Chelsea or Westminster to Newcastle, Manchester. All I see is people walking with their head down, spiritually bankrupt, with suffering with the global silent killer that is mental health. So we need to try and help each other, and we need to speak up and speak out about the injustices and the suffering that we see around us in our communities, the way we treat old people, for example.
Well, how's your mum taking this? She must be worried sick.
My mum's absolutely distraught at the moment. Yeah, my mum's absolutely devastated. But for them not to let me to go home to see her, and for her to be saying like, "Are you telling me that my son is not allowed to come home and see me?" And she said to her, "Well, I have to speak to my manager about that."
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she just doesn't understand. She just can't.
That's atrocious.
And she just can't take it anymore. Yeah, it's quite sad. The pain of my loved ones troubles me greatly. It causes me deep sadness. Again, this is part of the sacrifice, that I've got myself into by speaking up about these things, But we need to continue to try and help each other, to try and talk about issues in our communities. And I really believe that. I really believe we can the collective voice of oppression in modern Britain can become a force to be reckoned with. I really do. People power. 1 million people marched against the Iraq War. They still went and massacred Iraq and Afghanistan anyway. 1 million obviously wasn't enough, was it? Maybe we need more. Maybe need more one day. I believe that we will walk one day as brothers and sisters in arms from Whitehall to Westminster to Hyde Park, leading something new, some kind of revolution, some kind of new political movement. I believe that will happen one day, Shaun, yeah.
Wow, so there you have it. A harrowing story with a sad ending, and God knows what's going to happen next. So please, support Pepsi. His links are down there in the description box. He definitely needs everybody's love and support right now. And I'm just deeply moved. So put in the comments what you thought about this, and people are going to be worried about you now, wondering what's going to happen next. Huge thank you to Joe and James staying late tonight to film 3 podcasts in one day. I promised them I would never do that again, and it's happened. A huge thank you to Pepsi for coming in and just bearing his soul and telling us about his important work. So, all right, give me a hug, man.
Cheers, Shaun. Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your support. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, anytime, brother.
Cheers.
Of course. Yeah. Good luck with what you're doing, man.
You too.
Yeah.
You too, buddy.
Cheers.
All the best. Yeah, cheers.